Hello, YouTubers. I'm sorry, but this is not a message directed directly to you. It is meant for a YouTube group and channel called the Young Turks. This is now, I think, the 6th time I've tried to contact you, and I have as of late had no response. So I'm hoping that maybe a history of your name being the Young Turks out on YouTube will maybe spark some sort of response. So I'm going to read you a history of the Armenian genocide perpetrated by 3 individuals who called themselves the Young Turks. This is from, pull it up, the ArmenianHeritage.com, and I will be including a link of this after I finish speaking to you. It'll be in the description. Let us begin with the Armenian genocide. Genocide of the Armenians by the Turkish government during World War I represents a major tragedy in the modern age. In this first genocide of the 20th century, almost an entire nation was destroyed. The Armenian people were effectively eliminated from the homeland they occupied for nearly 3,000 years. The annihilation was premeditated and planned to be carried out under the cover of war. The evil perpetrators of the genocide included Sultan Abdul Hamid II and the Young Turks, Enver Pasha, Talat Pasha, and Dejmal Pasha, all brothers. The Ottoman Empire. Now, between 1915 and 1918, the Ottoman Empire, ruled by Muslim Turks, carried out a policy to eliminate its Christian Armenian minority. Genocide was preceded by a series of massacres in 1894 through 96, and then again in 1909. It was followed by another series of massacres beginning in 1920. By 1922, Armenians had been eradicated from their historical homeland. Like all empires, the Ottoman Empire was a multinational state. At one time, it stretched from the gates of Vienna in the north to Mecca in the south. From the 16th century to its collapse following World War I, the Ottoman Empire included areas of historical Armenia. The rulers of the empire governed over a heterogeneous society and maintained institutions that favored Muslims, particularly those of Turkish background. And it subordinated and really subjugated Christians and Jews as second-class citizens, subject to a range of discriminatory laws and regulations imposed both by the state and by its official religion, Islam. In 1908, a group of reformists known as the Young Turks overthrew the declining Ottoman government, formerly organized as the Committee of Union and Progress. The Young Turks decided to Turkify multi-ethnic Ottoman society in order to preserve the Ottoman state and from further disintegration, and to obstruct the national aspirations of the various minorities. Resistance to this measure convinced them that the Christians, and especially Armenians, could not be assimilated. When World War I broke out in 1914, the Young Turks saw it as an opportunity to rid the country of its Armenian population. Does this sound familiar? Now, for the perpetrators. In 1894 to 1896, Sultan Abdul Hamid II, known in history as the Red Sultan, carried out a series of massacres of the Armenian population of the Ottoman Empire. The worst of the massacres being in 1895, resulting in the death of thousands of civilians. Estimates run from 100 to 300,000, and leaving tens of thousands destitute. There we are. Most of those killed were men. In many towns, the central marketplace and other Armenian-owned businesses were destroyed, usually by fire. The killings were done during the day and were witnessed by the general public. This kind of organized and systematic brutalization of the Armenian population pointed to the coordinating hand of the central authorities. The massacres were meant to undermine the growth of Armenian nationalism by frightening the Armenians with the terrible consequences of dissent. The furor of the state was directed at the behavior and the aspirations of Armenians. The Sultan was alarmed by the increasing activity of Armenian political groups and wanted to curb their growth before they gained any more influence by spreading ideas about civil rights and autonomy. Sorry, it's 4 a.m. here. It was his state policy, being Sultan Abdul Hamid II, aka the Red Sultan, to solve the Armenian problem by murdering the entire race. As for the Young Turks themselves, Enver Pasha, the Minister of War, who at 26 was a leader in the revolution which deposed Abdul Hamid and established the new regime of the Young Turks. The Young Turks ruled the Turkish Empire for their own selfish purposes and developed a government which was much more wicked, oppressive, and murderous than that of Abdul Hamid. Talat Pasha, the ex-Grand Vizier of Turkey. In 1914, Talat was Minister of the Interior and was the most influential leader in the Committee of Union and Progress, a secret organization which controlled the Turkish Empire. Dejmal Pasha, Minister of Marine. In 1914, Dejmal headed to the police department. It was his duty to run down civilians who were opposed to the political gang then controlling Turkey. Now for the actual genocide. The measures implemented in 1915 by the Young Turks affected the entire Armenian population, men, women, and children. On the night of April 23rd, 1915, scores of Armenian political, religious, educational, intellectual leaders in Constantinople, many of them friends and acquaintances of the Young Turk rulers, were arrested, deported to Anatolia, and put to death. Then in May, Minister of Internal Affairs, Talat Pasha, claiming the Armenians were untrustworthy, ordered their deportation to relocation centers in the desert of Syria and of Mesopotamia. Armenians serving the Ottoman armies, who had already begun to be segregated into unarmed labor battalions, were taken out in batches and murdered. Of the remaining population, the adult and teenage males were swiftly separated from the deportation caravans and killed outright under the direction of Young Turk officials and agents. The greatest torment was reserved for men and women, for women and children, who were driven for weeks, preyed upon, raped, tortured, and abused. Many took their own lives as well as the lives of their children to end it rather than prolong their suffering and humiliation at the hands of the Young Turks. In this manner, an entire nation melted away, and the Armenian people were effectively eliminated from their homeland of nearly 3,000 years. Countless survivors and refugees scattered throughout the Arab provinces were to die of starvation, epidemic, and exposure. Even the memory of the Armenian nation was intended for obliteration. Churches and monuments were desecrated, and small children were snatched from their parents, renamed, and farmed out to be raised by Turks. Many girls and younger women were seized from their families and taken to be slave brides. It is believed that 1.5 million people of Armenian descent were killed in the 1915 genocide. Now, I'm hoping that this has somewhat enlightened you as to the meaning of the name The Young Turks. And I hope that you realize that you now bear the burden of 1.5 million deaths, murders, and rapes. So, please, if you have a problem with bearing, that kind of mantle, I recommend you change it. Have a nice night. Thank you.